Warning: the events described in this video are from personal eyewitness accounts and are not intended to endorse or offend any religious beliefs. According to the Quran, the jinn exist around us on a parallel plane. The name comes from an Arab word meaning to hide, since the beings are concealed from our senses. The singular form of the word is jinni, from which the English word genie is derived. The Quran states that the jinn were created before humans from a smokeless fire, while humans were created from clay. They are not necessarily evil, they have free will, and so can choose to follow God's guidance or Satan's temptation. The Quran also tells us that some jinn listened to the recitation of the Quran and became believers, while others remained disbelievers and enemies of God. Muslims believe that, like Satan, some jinn can choose to mislead or harm us. There are protective prayers within the Quran. The jinn have some abilities that humans do not have, such as changing their shape, flying and traveling fast. They can also see and hear things that humans cannot. However, they are also subject to God's judgment and punishment, and they will face the day of resurrection alongside humans.
When my grandmother was on her deathbed, a cat started to appear in her home. We had no idea how it came into the house, as all the doors and windows were closed and my grandmother was not mobile enough to let it in. It was dirty and accompanied by a terrible nauseating smell. When we prayed over my grandmother, speaking verses from the Quran, it would vanish.
I saw the jinn when I was 3 years old. I was sleeping, and I vividly remember waking up to see 3 figures standing over me. I don't remember seeing their faces, just their outlines surrounded by an ethereal light. They didn't seem threatening, just curious, and maybe a little bit protective. When my mother entered the room, they disappeared. It was only years later that I realized they were not human.
A few days ago, I woke up from a nightmare in which a jinn entered my cat. It scared me so much I switched on the passage light and opened my door to allow the light to come into my room. I then started to slowly drift back to sleep. As I was close to deep sleep, I turned on my left side. As I turned, my eyes opened briefly, and that's when I saw this dark figure enter my room. It came in so quick and did not have any human face or features. Just a pure black figure. It came into my room and stood right in front of me. Then I couldn't open my eyes or move. I was in sleep paralysis. I heard it say something, but I didn't understand. It said something like, "Don't worry," and I somehow feel as if it touched me. It was definitely evil. I did not feel any goodness from it, and I felt an evil presence even before I went to sleep. I was then able to move and I ran out of the room.
I am a Muslim and I was possessed by a jinn. I don't know how I became possessed, but my behavior changed suddenly and dramatically. I started drinking alcohol and taking drugs, which are forbidden for Muslims. I doubted my faith, constantly disrespected my parents, and became interested in idols like Shiva and Durga. When I went out, I would look at things around me like I had never seen them before. I would look at trees and plants and just keep looking. I started eating twice as much as I used to, and masturbating every day, but I was not at all interested in girls or boys for sex. The jinn was using my body to satisfy its own needs and curiosity. I would look in the mirror and smile and stare until my eyes turned red. A Sufi priest came to my home at my parents' request. I didn't believe in his power. I thought he was just making money from our superstitions. But when he entered the room, I started shaking uncontrollably. I could hear shrieking sounds within my head. The Sufi told my parents I was possessed by a jinn. When he asked my name, I started making weird movements, nodding my head left and then right, like I was searching for something. My voice started to change, not like as in films, but as if my own voice was being used by someone else. He started asking questions, but I was only answering with strange guttural sounds. Soon I started being even more weird. I was sitting straight up on the sofa, but slowly I started to bend forward. I stared at the ground so hard that my eyes hurt. The Sufi stood up suddenly, grabbed my hands and told me to look up. I thought he was going to hit me, but he looked deep into my eyes and said, "Ya Allah." He had a helper with him who grabbed my hands. He started reciting some verses from the Quran, put his palm on my forehead, and then blew air around my face. He asked my mother to bring water, and as he recited, he told me to drink it. He also tied a black string around my arms and told me not to remove it. He told my mum that he needed to purify the house. He called some of his helpers, who all started reciting the Quran in unison in front of me very loudly. I could still hear the weird sounds in my head. After 5 or 6 minutes, I started to listen to their words. It was like with every breath leaving my body, my mind was coming clearer and clearer. Now I was on their side, and I was thinking how good the Quran sounds. The jinn that had possessed me left my body. After they finished reciting, they told my mom to recite the Quran loudly daily with me. It took me around 5 or 6 months to get back to normal. When I had fully recovered, the Sufi priest returned to visit me. He told me that the jinn possess people who they think are beautiful. Beautiful does not mean physically beautiful. They are attracted to non-believers. They satisfy their needs by entering into a person's body and having sexual activities, in my case, masturbation. Their plane of existence is very different from ours, so they enter our bodies so that they can experience our world.
This account sounds very similar to possession experienced in the Catholic faith. So, are there beings who inhabit other realms parallel with ours who can pass into our world? If you have had a true supernatural experience, please send it to us at IntriguingRealms@gmail.com, and we may feature it on the channel. And as always, sweet dreams.